So we're just going to wait a few minutes as I'm watching all the participants come in. Loving the connectivity of rural, remote and regional Australia. So thank you everybody for joining us for the National Rural Women's Coalition, How Do Rural, Remote and Regional Women Get On Boards. We're lucky today to have with us three fantastic presenters in Cara Peake, Claire Brond and Nicola Wakefield Evans. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. We are expecting 200 people on today, so it's a pretty big hour. I'm conscious that we've only got those 60 minutes, but I don't want any of you to miss out of a single second of what's going to be shared with you today by these amazing speakers who have rural women and have made it at all different levels. Started at the beginning and then look where they are now. So I'm just seeing them all come up, pop, 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 they're all coming up, fantastic. So I might start, but I'm sure that there are going to be more people joining us as we go through. So welcome everybody to the National Rural Women's Coalition, How Do Rural, Remote and Regional Women Get On Boards. I'm Kelly McDonald, the CEO of the National Rural Women's Coalition. In the spirit of reconciliation, the National Rural Women's Coalition would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I am on the land of the Gomeroi, the nation of Kamilaroi. I'm in Gunnedah, northwest New South Wales. Today we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I extend my respect to the Aboriginal people and the Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. I would also like to just give you a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to have a poll at the end of today's session. So just before you click off, could you make sure that you complete that poll for us, please? Just gives us some really great evaluation on how we went today and some other information that you might be looking for from the National Rural Women's Coalition. Each of our speakers will be speaking for 12 minutes. You'll hear a little tinkling sound from me, the timekeeper, at 10, and I'll also post that into the chat room just for those that may not be able to hear that noise, so that you know that you've got 2 minutes to just do a wind up. I encourage you all to use the chat room to ask any questions as they come up to you for each of our presenters, and there will be a little Q&A just at the end of the session. If there's some resources that our presenters indicate that they have, we will be sending those out to all those that have registered through us. So if you don't get the links or you don't catch it through the presentation, don't worry, I'll send that through to you by this afternoon. So you should have those fairly quickly. We are recording today, and so if you've missed it or there's a point that you wanted to follow up on, please go to the NRWC website and follow the links through to our YouTube page, and you'll be able to watch this event at your leisure. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the President of the National Rural Women's Coalition, Leonie Noble. Leonie is the President and the immediate past President of the National Women in Seafood Australasia, which is of a particular passion of hers. She also sits on the National Fishing Advisory Council. Leonie has represented her community on the Mid-West Gasco Regional Development Board and the National Alliance RDA Board. Past roles also include chairing the Western Australian Rural, Remote and Regional Network, which highlights the amazing women in the Western Australian region, and has a role in feeding policy into the state government to improve the communities and lives of women in rural, remote and regional Western Australia. The Abrolhos Islands Ministerial Advisory Committee and the Rock Lobster Industry Advisory Committee and the Western Australian Fishing Council. Leonie was one of the 2 delegates to be selected to be a part of the Australian delegation to the APEC Women's Economic Forum in Peru in 2016 and attended the CSW 62 and 63 in 2018 and 19 as part of the National Rural Women's Coalition's delegation to New York. Leonie also works and speaks internationally with Women in Seafood Australasia and has been awarded many national and state leadership awards and was inducted into the National Seafood Hall of Fame. Much of her work revolves around the fact that, put simply, Leonie believes in regional, remote and regional people and the rights to be heard, and for their rights to be heard. Leonie says women are in particular extremely good at understanding and managing the social sustainability of communities. It's with great pleasure I introduce to you Leonie Noble.
Good morning and welcome everybody. I'm going to do a little bit of a blurb around NRWC first. The National Rural Women's Coalition is one of the 6 women's alliances funded by the Australian Government. We are made up of 5 member organisations, so that's CWA, Women in Seafood Australasia, Australian Women in Ag, Australian Women in Local Government and the Rural Health Alliance, and many of you would be either members or aware of at least one of those. We also comprise of a representative from each of these member organisations, and we currently have 3 independent directors appointed for their particular skill set and passion for rural women. In fact, the wonderful Cara Peake, who you will hear from today, is an integral part of the NRWC board. Webinars that address leadership and diversity in leadership such as this today are an important avenue for connection and learning for our rural women in Australia and form part of what the NRWC believe and work towards. The NRWC have a particular focus on leadership and advocacy and produce and provide predominantly online programs alongside our signature residential muster program held in Canberra annually. These programs are offered free of charge and allow participants to learn, grow and be confident moving forward. We also believe that it's extremely important that RRR women should have the same opportunities as their city sisters, and our programs aim to address that tyranny of distance and costs that can be an impediment to attending on-ground programs, usually a long way from home. So keep an eye out on our socials for programs in 2021, and that's my unashamed plug for NRWC this morning. Moving on, it's fantastic to register the level of interest by RRR women to step up and put themselves forward to increase the number of women on boards. We all know the importance and understand the need to increase and challenge the diversity and makeup of boards, especially in RRR Australia, where the long-held perception of women, perpetrated often through the media, is of gingham and akubras, producing fantastic scones and other background of community events, often through background work. All of us here today know that rural women are that, but much, much, much more. Rural women hold every position in society in both community and professional arenas. However, and this is the reality, at times imposter syndrome rears its ugly head, and we as women question if we have the qualifications, knowledge or confidence to put our hand up for that community, industry, state or even federal board. And I'm here today to tell you that you do. And the 3 amazing speakers today will outline what it is that is needed and how to go about gaining a place on all boards from community to federal level. On a personal note, I always listen to my bio being read out and sometimes smile, but usually cringe, as it sounds like I went from being a fisherman's wife living in my shack at the Abrolhos Islands, 60 k's off the West Australian coast, straight to being the president of a national board. Not true. My first foray into committees and boards was through my children's P&Cs. Then I started a non-for-profit community group to challenge state agencies' lack of consultation, which led to increased consultation processes being put in place by the government of the day. From there to my appointment on a couple of state industry boards, and then over the next 30 years, I've continued to put up my hand for positions on boards, mainly to ensure that women have a voice on what in reality have been very male-dominated arenas. And yes, on the surface, I've been very successful. However, there have been just as many no's as yeses throughout those years. I have learnt to not take rejection personally, just to continue to try to get to where I can make a difference, to where doors open easier, and to where I'm in a position that I can take women along with me on that journey. So I ask you to listen carefully to our amazingly knowledgeable speakers today. Ask the questions that you need to. There are no silly questions. I can guarantee that if you don't know the answer, neither will many others online. And be confident going forward to ask if you need help. Be confident that you are good enough and to put your hand up. And know that overnight success sometimes takes longer than you think. So don't give up. So girls, be brave and enjoy today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonie. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Cara Peake. Cara Peake, as Leonie said, is an independent director of the National Rural Women's Coalition, and many of you may have seen her on the front cover of Grazier that's just been that's just hit the sidewalk. So, and if you haven't, please get out and grab it and meet our beautiful Cara. Cara is a modern representation of the oldest living culture in the world. She's a lawyer by profession, having worked primarily in native title. Cara now focuses her skills to create cultural, economic development, independent social programs and enterprises in rural, regional and remote communities. Cara has worked in rural and emerging communities in Australia, Canada and the USA, specialising in stakeholder liaison and engagement relationship management, corporate social responsibilities, cultural intelligence, program development and project management. Cara understands the significance of providing the opportunity for community involvement in order to foster sustainable outcomes. In doing so, she has experience in developing on-ground strategies and approaches utilised by frontline team members, thereby creating a safe and mutually respectful culture. She possesses a unique perspective from both a community and corporate standpoint and on the importance of working with community and leveraging competing agendas to achieve cultural intelligence and mutual beneficial goals delivered with cultural integrity. Now, Cara is the Head of Innovation on the Cultural Intelligence Project Proprietary Limited, which comes from Broome in Western Australia. She's also a Director of the Museum of Freedom and Tolerance. She's the co-chair of the Global Indigenous Working Group and, as I said, an independent director on the National Rural Women's Coalition and the executive chairperson and founder of Saltwater Country. It is a great delight that I introduce to you Cara Pettit. Thank you, Cara.
Thanks, Cal. For those of you who don't know quite where I am, I'm a Yarrabunaba person, so in the northwest of our country, so I'm closer to Singapore than I am to Sydney, to give you some perspective of the distance. And so what I'd like to talk about today is, I'm coming from Yawuru country as well, which is my country. I'm a Yarrabunaba woman. And yeah, so where I am and where I'm regionally situated is quite challenging because of the lack of resources and also the tyranny of distance, and you know, the weather can slap you in the face like it can in any part of this nation. And so it's quite interesting and challenging to start out, I suppose, in the board sphere, because everything in the Kimberley is quite raw. And sometimes I've got some friends and colleagues from the community that say that they specialise in just-in-time productions, because it takes that long to bring certain things together to make anything happen in RRR communities. But one of the key things that I want to talk to you about today is starting out profile building and local and regional representation, which has also led me to international and you know, general domestic representation as well, obviously through my role on the NRWC board, among others. So in terms of starting out, one of the key things that I have never probably struggled with is finding your voice. My mother has told me to be quiet for most of my life, in comparison to my siblings. However, I find that my voice and my almost inability to be intimidated, to be able to walk into a room, to know who I am, where I am from, and what I think. It doesn't mean that I'm not open to what other people think and to take in that information. But when I started out in the board sphere, having already been a solicitor, as Kelly mentioned, I was actually asked to be on the board because one of our elders had heard me speak up at a community meeting in a respectful way, but speaking on the knowledge set that I had and querying what they were doing and being quite an engaged community member. And so it was I didn't realise that, you know, that they were paying attention to that, of course, but it was a space where I was my authentic self. I contributed to the meeting at hand, and then it was taken notice of, which kind of set me on a trajectory to eventually become a board member, deputy chair, and then chairperson of Nyambaburu Yawuru, which is the company limited by guarantee of the Yawuru people, with the purpose of looking after Yawuru country and then developing it for future generations. And so had I not spoken out at that event, you know, who knows what would have happened. I still would have found a path, but maybe just not the same one. I also make sure that in my profile building especially, but also in starting out, that what I had reflected around what my core values are, what I will accept, what I won't accept, and I do that in my employment and my general life as well, but particularly when I'm going to be putting myself out into the public realm. And in doing so, I aligned myself and only said yes to the opportunities that were either going to align with my passion and purpose, or align with some section of my core values, maybe not all of it, but just blend it together and make sure it was the right choice. So there's definitely some vetting that's gone on for me. I've been requested to join a few different things that I've said no to, which is just as powerful as saying yes, I believe, because it's important to know what you won't do or who you aren't before you can work out who you are. And in doing the profile building and continuing on from the starting out, I volunteered at a lot of organisations. I offered my skills and services, obviously, you know, as a professional. And I spent a huge amount of time in the community working out what was needed and talking to people and understanding and really doing thorough stakeholder engagement, albeit it was informal and for my purposes of contribution. And as a result of that, I actually established our own company and our own nonprofit because I saw gaps in the market that were not being filled and that the needs of our people were not being met. And not that we have solved every problem in the world, but we're definitely on the way to making a contribution to our local community. And so that was, I developed Saltwater Country Limited and also the Cultural Intelligence Project. But stepping back to Nyamaburu Yawuru, one of the key things about being on that board was that it is it's a place-based board, but that it has domestic and global reach. So it enabled me to embed myself in the workings of the organisation as much as a board does, of course, and then enabled me to network with state and federal governments and also international relations as well. So it was a really great stepping stone, and I'm sure that whether it be your traditional boards or your local council or non-profits or businesses that might be in your regions, don't just think about the impact that's in the region, but how can you influence those other circles of influence and stakeholders and different things, funders, to come into the region, and then that also broadens your network as somebody that's going to be going on to that board. I took on some self-education around board education more recently. I actually cut my teeth more in the community than I did with a formal piece of paper, albeit I had a law degree before that, but not everybody likes a lawyer on their boards. Sometimes I think there's too many lawyers on boards, but anyway, that's my personal opinion. And so then what I did was taking the local content and the local knowledge, understanding my community, understanding their needs, and pairing that with my own core values, and then who and what organisations did I align with or that could I bring value to? And then how could that then connect in with other things that I wanted to achieve in my board career or my career more broadly? And so in doing that, I was able to connect different facets or different interests that I have, which therefore maintains my passion and purpose in actually delivering for the boards that I'm on, as well as understanding the integral challenges that exist, particularly in the First Australians communities, and then compounded by being in a triple R situation. And I think one of the core things, I suppose, lucky for me, is that I've always been a born advocate. So if there are people less fortunate than myself or people not being represented properly, whether they be First Australians, First Nations people, women, people with disabilities, or, you know, the whole spectrum of human beings that are not represented properly, and particularly in Triple R communities, then I make sure that I speak up when I think appropriate, and don't necessarily take no for an answer. I'm pretty dogged at getting to yes, I suppose. And that thankfully has benefited my community quite a lot, and the community organisations that I represent. I'm not somebody that is a huge team sports person or anybody like that, so I'd never volunteered for the local footy club or whatever, but that doesn't mean that those aren't also good places to cut your teeth in terms of running committees, getting the good governance in place, and perhaps even sorting out some of their governance in some of the clubs that I've seen. You know, so much of the workload falls on one person when it's supposed to be shared across a board and shared across a membership as well. So that's quite important. It's important not to take too much on, is probably my problem, is that I do say yes a lot. And, but in doing so, you know, amazing opportunities are created. So to recap, the starting out was volunteering, working out and reflecting on who I am as a person and how I align with other things, setting out and looking at what organisations exist within my community, and which ones I align with and which ones I don't, like the sporting organisation, for example, but it doesn't mean it's not a valid choice. And then working out which ones I'll say yes to and which ones I won't as well, because that's kind of the stage that I'm at now. The Museum for Freedom and Tolerance is a perfect example. They approached me to become an independent director because of the board work and because of my professional career before now. So when you're starting out, don't think that these small opportunities aren't going to layer up and build up to larger opportunities. And it's important to understand how they kind of all interconnect. And as most people online at the moment can probably appreciate, is that particularly in Triple R communities, in very small communities, we are all connected in one way or another. So it's important to be able to differentiate between, particularly when you're sitting on a board, and I've been in a situation where I've been sitting on a board with my law bosses, so my senior elders in my Yawuru community, mixed with independent directors that are, you know, financial or you know, legal professionals that work globally, to up and coming board members that might be a bit younger than me, maybe not in years, but definitely in professional experience. And then a couple of obviously the executive staff and whatever that might pop in and out. So it's a really small board dynamic in a Triple R community, and in understanding that, how you have that relationship on the board, and then how you, and robust conversations that will happen, and then how you continue your friendships, your respectful cultural relationships, etc., outside of the boardroom, and understanding how you are a united front from a board decision perspective, and then maintaining that, but managing that against, you know, what other community interactions or family relationships, etc., that you might have. Because we have something that we say, at least in my community, my family, is that Black politics, in terms of First Nations communities, our interconnectedness spreads across the country, and is a different dynamic that uniquely in my board experience I've had to balance between. But this, again, has given me opportunities like the NRWC, where I actually put in an application, hastily put in an application that first time, and got it in, and was thankful to be accepted on the basis of the skill set that I came with, which was this Triple R domestic and international experience that I could then bring to the national stage for NRWC and represent the regions in that process.
Thank you, Cara. I'm sorry I cut you short there. I'm just very conscious of time, and I'm sure we could all listen to you heaps more. So please, if you've got any questions for Cara, please don't forget to put them in the chat room. I was trying to grab some hints while she was talking as well, but I'm sure you're all madly scribbling lots of your own notes. It now gives me pleasure to introduce to you our second speaker for today is Claire Braun, Non-Executive Director of Women on Boards, appointed in 2006, and Executive Director of Women on Boards Australia, appointed in 2018, Vice Chair of Central Coast Conservatorium. Claire is a former journalist and public relations manager who used her high-level advocacy skills to co-found Women on Boards in Australia. She's a highly respected speaker on gender balance and related business issues. Claire informs and entertains as a presenter, is renowned as a networker and skilled at building relationships for common benefit. She became a Churchill Fellow in 2011 for her research into the effects of gender quotas on publicly listed company boards in Norway, the UK and France, which led to the establishment of Women in Boards in the UK in 2012. Claire is the Director of the Central Coast Conservatorium of Music, a past Director of the Foundation of Australian Agricultural Women and the Women's Club, and a graduate of the Benevolent Society Sydney's Leadership Program. For the girl from Ebor, New South Wales, welcome Claire.
Thanks very much, Kelly, and welcome everybody. I come to you from the land of the Gurringal and Darkinjung people here on the central coast of New South Wales. So hello and thank you very much to everybody and to my fellow panelists. I do indeed come from Ebor, born in Hay, grew up in Ebor, and interestingly spent my very first board on the Foundation for Australian Agricultural Women, which was one of the founding organisations for the National Rural Women's Coalition. And I remember very well the long discussions about the logo, which I still think we did a great job with. So I'm very pleased to see that you've kept it after all of these years. So with Val Lang and Alana Johnson, Kathy from AWIA, like so many of those wonderful rural women. So it's lovely to be back and speaking to you, and I do appreciate the opportunity. Whilst I did found it, that's my co-founder, Ruth Med from Women on Boards. And I will just quickly flick through a couple of things. I also wrote my points down. As you heard, we were founded in 2006 in Australia. Prior to that, we existed really as a bit of a non-profit movement, but we actually founded in 2006 here. And then in 2012, we founded the company in the UK. So it was nice to see that we had a reverse sort of offshoot as a result of my Churchill Fellowship. We actually were able to found in the UK. So that was particularly good. The vision has always been the same: to increase the number of women on board and in leadership roles, to achieve a gender balance of 40% women, 40% men, and 20% of either and or any other genders. I've always talked about balance when it comes to gender rather than diversity. I think diversity comes within gender. Diversity relates to ethnicity, regionality, all of those different things, age, experience. And so we've always talked about gender balance as opposed to gender diversity, particularly as women make up, 51% of the global population. So nothing hugely diverse about that. Our values, I always think it's nice. It was nice to hear Cara talk about values and how she connects those back to the boards that she serves on. Our big values, which we've always had, are inclusion. So we've always welcomed anyone to our network, people who've had any aspiration for board roles. Many of them joined us way back when and are now serving on, umpteen and many ASX and other boards. Transparency, one of the big reasons that women didn't get on boards. John McFarlane, a former CEO of ANZ Bank, once very famously said the reason women don't get on boards is because men don't put them there. He was fairly right. And so really we're about opening up access to roles and opening up the opportunity for people to be able to see those. And that's really happened a lot more since we started. Innovation, agile and adaptive, particularly in COVID times. It's been a year when everyone's had to pivot, be agile, be adaptive and move. We're very loyal, stick with us and we'll stick by you has always been our mantra. And reciprocity, I think the hand down and the hand up has always been very much something that women who are helping others to get on boards and working with others have actually done. So, becoming board ready and demonstrating capacity. Cara asked me to talk a little bit about this from the perspective of mainly government boards, but also not-for-profit boards. Bear in mind too, and Nicola, of course, and Cara, both being in the legal fraternity, will reinforce that just because you're on a not-for-profit board does not mean that the governance goes out the window or your obligations are particularly less. You still have very substantive obligations, as you do on government boards. In the Central Coast of New South Wales, our council has just presided over a $500 million loss, the greatest in local government history. And the big question everyone's asking is where was the Audit and Finance Committee in relation to much of this? So it's really important, first up, to know what sectors and industries where you might seek to have influence or serve on a board, because in the end, serving on a board, you're not running the organisation. You are having influence. You're exercising wisdom and judgment. You're not there to meddle and fiddle. So you need to think about where you want to be doing that. In agriculture, there are so many. Anyone who read the Weekend Australian would have seen, you know, the vast, listing of, in fact, really, I suppose, the corporatisation of agriculture has been happening pretty much since I was born back in 1970. And now we have major aggregations, particularly around the cattle and large irrigated sectors. My brother's in the feedlot industry in Toowoomba, and it is just absolutely massive. So there are those private bodies. They're much harder to get on unless you know people, unless you're quite often connected to them in some way at a regional and local level, backed to your networks. There's the listed sector. We are getting a lot more companies listed, and of course we're getting a lot more private equity in investing in agriculture, and we're starting to see some shifts in the superannuation sector doing that too. So think about superannuation bodies, think about credit unions, think about those sorts of things that actually impact and influence where money is spent within the agricultural sector. You've got the old member-based grower bodies. I was a bit famous once for setting up something called the Australian Beef Association, which took on the might of the MLA and others, and was sort of really an organisation that was trying to shake up the way we did rural politics. So we grew quite a large member body, which sadly, great board story actually, great board story in that you don't go to election too early and you're very careful about who you put on the board, because it largely failed after a couple of people got hold of it. So those member-based grower bodies, they're across 14 sectors. If you look at our website, we've actually got a full list of them all. We have about 1,800 organisations across multiple sectors tracked through our Boardroom Diversity Index. So across things like the tertiary education sector, across agriculture, across all of those R&D corporations. So they come for sugar, they come in beef, all of those things. Some of them are quite difficult to get on. Lucinda Corrigan will tell you the story of her 3-time nomination for the MLA board. They can be quite hard. So you do have to have a very good pitch to get on those boards, particularly in those broad scale industries. So they can be quite hard. So my advice for those is go for committees. Go for government boards to start with. Start to build your networks across. Come in at multiple levels. Start to think about, okay, let me get on the grain growing panel for Northern New South Wales, and then work your way up. Many of them are connected to the state farmer bodies. They can be very political and very difficult to serve on because they have very large member councils. But again, the women are doing much better on some of those bodies. And of course, we've got a female who's running now, for example, is the first female president in Georgie Somerset of AgForce Queensland. And there's a great podcast on our website, which I'll pop on to the chat afterwards with her in terms of how she actually built that. So there's a large list of agricultural bodies and many of them have sub-organisations or committees or advisory bodies and different structures within them. So you've got to keep an eye out. They're usually available on the government website, or as I said, there's a link to them on our website, which I'll put up too. State and federal government boards, the good news is there's thousands of them. The bad news is there's thousands of them. There are in every state an entire, in most of the big states, there's up to 1,000 government boards and committees. They are all sub-classified. Victoria is magnificent at classifying its state government boards. A1, A2, A2A, A2B, A2C. What it means is it actually relates to their level of delegation and where they're reporting back to things like the minister, etc. The big thing to remember about government boards is you generally only have 1 or 2 members or stakeholders, because actually your members and stakeholders are not the great people of New South Wales or the nation. They actually happen to be the minister or the person who sits above you. So in that sense, government boards can be quite tricky, but there's a raft of advisory bodies, a raft of them. There is an advisory board in government for just about everything. There is an advisory board to recommending how many kangaroos to cull in Western New South Wales and how many possums to kill in Tasmania. Seriously, there is an advisory board for so many things. Lots of opportunity there. Go and have a look at the Agricultural Department website, and there will be links there often to a central list which comes from the federal and state governments. There's committees, there's different levels of boards, there's statutory or authorities, all of which have different legal status. So build a profile, the hanging around factor. People need to know you can be a great director and do a great job. And I think Cara demonstrated that, so I'm not going to go into that. Audit your skills and experience. Know what you know and understand. What are your career? What was your professional roles? What were your responsibilities? What knowledge gaps do you need to fix? You don't have to have a degree to be a company director. It's not like being a dentist, you won't be struck off. But it's very good to know what you don't know and to go and fix those knowledge gaps. So if you're light on finance, go and do something about it. If you're light on risk, go and do something about it. So it's really important that you protect yourself and that you actually step up to do the best job that you can. What industry sectors have you worked in? What transferable skills can you take from one industry to something else? What's your proxy board experience? For example, you haven't exactly served within the grains industry, but what looks like a big sector where there's, you know, huge broad scale farming, but where it's a product where there's a lot of export, those types of things. So think about what is transferable. Why does a regional hospital look like an airline? Highly unionised workforce. You've got to sell the seat, or you actually lose it. What's your personal qualities and what's your fit? Last slide is on build a quality board CV. I cannot stress this enough. What is your USP? Your capabilities, your experience, your transferable skills, they all make up your unique selling point. What's your value proposition? You need to know who you are before you try and convince someone else to put you on a board. Keep it to 2P. You've got to bear in mind that people reading and how long they will spend on it. People will ask you for more if they want more. Strong opening Ps. Are your opening paragraphs written in strong, concise, active language? If you want to put a photograph in, make it a decent quality headshot that's congruent with your headshot that's on your LinkedIn profile, which of course you all have. No selfies against the fridge, please. That's not a good look. People need to be able to know who you are, okay? So the other last thing is having belief in yourself. I can. You've got to be your own best advocate. You've got to really, really work towards that. You've got to go in with the belief that it will happen. You will get more rejections than you do acceptances, but like everything in life, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you move on. We're always happy to help. You can always reach out to us, and I'm very happy to make these slides available to Kelly afterwards. And I think I've pretty much wrapped up in 12 minutes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sorry, thank you, Claire. You did really well. I'm sorry. It gets rushed at the end when you've got so much information, and I can just feel everybody's so thirsty for more information. So thank you for that. And thank you for making those slides available, and I will send them out to everybody that has registered today. I'd now like to introduce you to Nicola Wakefield Evans. Nicola is an experienced independent non-executive director of the Lendlease Group, Macquarie Group Limited, Macquarie Bank Limited and Clean Energy Finance Corporation, MetLife Australia and the Australian Institute for Company Directors. So you know how lucky we are to have her here today. She's also a member of the University of New South Wales Foundation Limited, the GEO Foundation, the Takeovers Panel. Nicola was a non-executive director of Toll Holdings Limited from 2011 to 2017, Bupa Australia and New Zealand from 2013 to 2018, and AsiaLink and AsiaLink Business, the University of Melbourne from 2011 to 2018. Nicola is passionate about the diversity and is the chairman of the 30% Club Australia, which I'm hoping we're going to hear a little bit more about today. Nicola was selected in 2009 as a member of the Advanced Asia 50, a group of the most influential Australians living and working in Asia, and was selected in 2011 as a member of the Advanced Global 50, a group of leading Australian women working outside Australia. The Australian Financial Review named Nicola as 2013 as one of the inaugural 100 Women of Influence. The National Rural Women's Coalition met Nicola in 2019 when she was a non-government delegate to the Commission on the Status of Women for 63 in New York, and her passion and energy in making sure that civil society had a voice in those negotiations will be remembered by all of us. So it is a great delight that I introduce you to Nicola. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly, and thank you, everybody. I can't tell you how I'm thrilled to be talking to you today. I think it's absolutely fantastic that we've got women from all over Australia, particularly from regional Australia. I'm here in Sydney, so I'm on Gadigal land, part of the Eora Nation, and I do have a rural background. I was born in Forbes and then spent time in Dubbo before we moved to Sydney, but I come from a very extensive family and I have lots of particularly female cousins who live all over rural New South Wales. It's a fantastic topic that we're talking on, because one of the things that I'm passionate about, which Kelly spoke to you in my introduction, is lifting the number of women in leadership roles. And by leadership, I mean all sorts of organisations. We need more women in government. We need more women in all levels of government. We need more women in leadership roles in all of our organisations, wherever they are in Australia. And we need a lot more diversity across all of those organisations. So I have an interesting journey. I spent a lot of time, so I'm a lawyer by background, like Cara. I spent a lot of time at the one law firm, so 30 years in the one law firm. But in that law firm, I was given lots of opportunities, including 2 stints overseas. But my board experience started by being asked to join the board of the school that I went to, so my school council board. Then I joined the board of the local preschool that my children went to, and there's a photograph of all 4 of them behind me. I was also, as a very young woman, I sail competitively and have sailed all my life. I was asked to be the youth representative on what was then the equivalent of Sailing Australia, and that was in my 20s. So I started my board life quite young, and when you look at my extensive CV, I've probably got more experience on a lot smaller organisations before I was appointed to my first listed board, which was in 2011, and that was Toll Holdings. So I agree with everything that my fellow speakers have said in how you build your board portfolio, if that's what you want to do. But I wanted to draw out a couple of things, and they come through the work I do as chair of the 30% Club Australia. So the 30% Club is a global movement to get more women into our top listed board. So it's got a very particular purpose. And I just wanted to confirm we absolutely support the measure that Claire and women on boards have, which is 40-40-20. But what the 30% Club is trying to do is get from a very low base, and we felt that we needed to set a slightly lower target. It was brought to Australia in 2015, where only 19% of directors on the ASX 200, so the top 200 companies, were women. We're now at just on 32%. So in 5 years, we've shifted that dial from 19% to 32% of the ASX 200. And it's involved an enormous number of people to get there. But what we've done is taken a lot of work that people like Women on Boards have done, and global organisations, in aligning the financial outcome where you've got more diverse leadership. And that's what I talk about a lot, is if you have more diverse leadership, you get better outcomes. And we're starting to see that with the makeup of our boards. But of course, not everyone can be on a listed board, and Australia has something like 65,000 companies or organisations that have boards. Claire's talked about government boards and local boards. Cara talked about a lot of the boards that she's been involved in. So they run from, I often say to people, they run from a 2-person family company who operate a fish and chip shop in, say, middle of New South Wales or Central Australia, to the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, which is the #1 listed company. So I think both, everybody's made the same point. It doesn't actually matter which size board you're on, you have the same obligations and liabilities as a director that are imposed on you either by the Corporations Act, if the company's been incorporated, or various state or federal legislation, depending on what type of organisation it is. So the first thing I always say is, if you want to be a director, or if you get the opportunity to be on a board, you need to understand what your duties and obligations are. And part of that is to, if you don't come out of a career or a job that's given you that type of knowledge, then go and get it. And there are lots of people that do courses where you can upskill yourself. Claire talked about making sure that you're financially literate, but you also need to be literate around a whole lot of topics that you deal with as a board member. The AICD have a lot of courses, and I think the thing I'd say about COVID is going to be hugely beneficial to Australians who are not in our capital cities, because we've proved that we've busted that myth that you need to be physically present for meetings. So I think the fact that we're all meeting, and there's so many of us all over Australia meeting today through Zoom, I think that will carry on in how boards and companies and organisations operate in the future. But the AICD has pivoted to all online, and there are some fantastic foundational courses just to upskill and get knowledge about how companies operate and what your legal duties and obligations are. I absolutely agree with Cara's view that you need to be passionate about the organisations that you're involved in, and that they need to align with your core values. And that's something that I've also done in building my career portfolio. And passion comes out of either being passionate about a sector or a company, or a company that has values that align with yours. But often passion and experience go hand in hand. So if you have experience in a sector or in a particular industry, then you often find that experience and passion are aligned. And I always say to aspiring directors, make sure you go after entities and you pursue entities or opportunities where you have that passion and you have that link between your core values and your passion. Then you need to have experience, and both Cara and Claire have talked about that. And there's many ways to get experience, and you'll find that most experienced directors, from large companies to medium-sized companies, government companies, and everything in between, will have built their experience through a whole range of different opportunities. I've described how I've gone from sports boards, a preschool board, a school board, and then ultimately I now sit on a couple of listed boards. The other important thing, and Claire touched on this, is networking. You need to be able to figure out how to get appointed if that's part of what your journey is. And part of that is to know people, or to identify who in your network can help you on that journey. And there's lots of different ways and ideas of doing that. One way of doing it is to join something like the AICD or Women on Boards, or your local Chamber of Commerce. You know, most of our big country towns and regions have chambers of commerce, and I'm passionate about making sure that you all, that's one way of getting that networking. If you aspire to, for example, to be on a government board, get to know your local member, because they can put your name forward. They are always looking, the governments are always looking for qualified people, and there's a huge push across Australia with our state and federal governments to increase the number of women on boards. And pleasingly, they've actually, most of them have gone past 40%, which is fantastic. keep up professional development. I've talked about understanding what your duties and obligations are, but it's more than that if you want to be a director, is to make sure that you're keeping up with changes in the law or changes in things that boards should be looking at. And COVID has proved that boards are looking at a whole lot of different issues, you know, the well-being of our employees, how we're going to operate in the future. Are we going to bring everybody back into offices or wherever we used to work? There's a whole lot of different issues that boards are grappling with. I won't talk about profile because I think Claire covered that really, really well, but profile is important. Make sure you have a LinkedIn and make sure that it's kept up to date and you have a good CV. And then lastly, the other thing I want to talk about is specifically take it down to regional Australia and the opportunities. Claire mentioned that there are lots of opportunities just in the agriculture space alone. And I want to give you a couple of case studies. Firstly, on the ARCD website, there's a really good case study of Hannah Wandell, who a number of you will know because she used to be a director of the National Rural Women's Coalition. But there's a really good podcast with Hannah and Sue McCluskey. They're being interviewed by Catherine Fox as part of the ARCD's board level podcast series. But they talk about the pathways that they've taken from rural Australia to the boards that they now sit on. The other couple of women that I want to call out as good examples, one is Liz O'Leary, who's the head of the Macquarie Infrastructure Group. So Macquarie has emerged as one of the largest owners of agricultural holdings in Australia, and that's run by a rural woman. Liz was brought up in the country, has had a long career at Macquarie, and when this role came up, our current CEO, Shamara Wickramanayake, was absolutely driven to appoint Liz into that role because of her rural background and the fact that she'd grown up on a farm in southwestern New South Wales. There are lots of opportunities with agricultural companies right across Australia, and there's a lot of aggregation going on. And as Claire pointed out, there's a lot of movement in the private equity space and the listed sector. So you've got companies like GrainCorp, which is now a large ASX company. And then member-based agricultural bodies, as Claire pointed out, are great opportunities to cut your teeth on board appointments. There's also sectors that are connected with agriculture, and one is one that I've been involved in, which is transport and logistics. There are large transport and logistic companies that are headquartered in country towns right across Australia, and they are often good sources. They all have boards, and they are all actually focusing on their governance at the moment through a lot of strategies that the federal and state governments are doing around transport and logistics, which has emerged as one of the fastest growing industries in Australia. It's how we move goods around this country of ours, and there's a lot of change happening there as well. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is understanding what it is that a director does. And if you don't know, or if you are curious, there are lots of ways to find out what do directors actually do. What do you do in a board meeting? What obligations do you have to keep abreast of what the organisation's doing? How involved do you get in the organisation's day-to-day operations? How do you get across the reading, particularly on larger boards? I can often get up to 1,000 pages to read for a board cycle on some of my bigger boards. But in fact, this year, some of the most difficult issues that I've had to deal with are on my smaller boards. So understanding what the role of a director is absolutely critical if this is a space that you're interested in moving into. I think, Kelly, I've probably reached the end of my timing as well. I could go on for ages on this topic, but again, I just wanted to reiterate how thrilled I am to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate all that and all the hints coming through and the connections in the chat room. That's fantastic. Now, this is your opportunity, ladies out there in the virtual world, to ask these three amazing women any questions that you like. So if you just want to put them in the chat room, and then we'll just wander around. We've just got a couple of minutes here for a couple of questions. The first one I'll put to the panel is regarding CVs. And the question came from Felicity, and it said, should you separate the CV around committees and board positions that you hold? I'm guessing they're thinking about how they should prepare a CV if they're looking for a board position.
Can I take that one? Because I do a lot of training in this space.
Claire.
Unless you've got the big profile, and someone like Nicola came off, you know, a significant legal career, people knew Nicole, who Nicola was, safe hands, still had to work hard to get on boards, but profile is more up there than perhaps myself or someone else who's, you know, out in regional areas. So when you're putting a board CV together, it's got to be 2 pages, and it's got to actually have up front what your value proposition is for a board. Okay, so it's board and positions first. It's not a great long list of endless jobs you've done with all of the kind of, you know, 25 dot points that attach under that. Get rid of that. It doesn't work. It's not great list. The first part should not be a lovely description of where you live, what your telephone number is, what your email address is, and what educational qualifications you have. People are not going to write you a letter or pay you a visit down the bottom. So think about page real estate. It's really, really critical. There's some hints on our website. We do offer an online version too, but it's quite a well-crafted document, and you've got to put it together strategically. And again, I stress it's 2 pages. So you really need to, every word needs to count, and it needs to factor in your proxy board experience, i.e. have you served on regional committees? Have you been part of EXCO? Have you sat on subsidiaries? Have you done anything that looks like project work? Have you done things that look like the work of a board? Are you a company secretary? Have you reported to a board? All of those types of things count, and you need to sort of upscale those. So it's not just about the job that you've done. I always say it's about what you understand, not just what you do.
Thank you. Now I'm going to throw a quick one to Nicola based on that, Claire, and that is so many of us now, particularly rural, remote and regional women, we've always been able to use the virtual world, but I think the rest of Australia has caught up with us. And so my question to you is, Nicola, when we're putting our CVs in, is the fact that we're living in rural, remote or regional Australia now less of an impediment than it has been in the past?
Absolutely, Kelly. And I think we've got COVID to thank partially for that. But I also think you're right. I mean, you have been living in a far more virtual world than perhaps I've been used to in you know, having a big career in a big city. So yes, I think there will be more opportunities, and I'm seeing a lot more, particularly interestingly, women who are living in rural and regional Australia who are on big boards. Eileen Doyle is somebody I wanted to call out, who lives in Newcastle and has just been appointed to the Dalrymple Bay Board, and they're listing later this month. So she's a good example of somebody, and so her location was no impediment at all to her appointment. And there's another woman I know really well, Sonia Fury, who lives in South Australia, who's on the elders, one of the elders boards, and she does not live in Adelaide. So I think there'll be a lot more opportunities, and it's something that the AICD is really conscious of. Is how do we harness this and make sure that we are providing opportunities for particularly women, because we have a very big diversity program at the AICD. How do we do that, and how do we build that capability that we need to provide the opportunities for women in rural and regional Australia to be appointed to boards? And I think where the opportunities will be are government boards.
Thank you. Cara, I'm just going to throw one quick question to you before I hand over to Leonie. I'm very conscious of time, but I love this question from Rebecca. Which is harder, corporate or listed boards or the local preschool? You've had experience across that whole level?
Well, I personally don't have kids, but I come from a very, very large family, so I would assume it would be the preschool, to be perfectly honest. you know, sometimes there's just as much ego in a 4-year-old as there is in a 50-year-old man. So that would be my guess. I've worked in male-dominated industries my whole life, and have had to grapple with a fair amount of narcissism and different things in my time, even though it's not as much as the other panelists that are on. But knowing the intricacies and the personal relationships that also exist within the preschool boards, the school environment, the mum shaming, I'm sure, that goes on in those spaces, I would probably hazard a guess that the local level might well be harder.
Thanks, Cara, and thanks, Rebecca, for asking that. So it's 2 o'clock, so I'm just going to hand over to Leonie Noble, the President of the National Rural Women's Coalition, to summarise and close. Thank you, Leonie.
Hi, wow, that is the fastest 1 hour, I think, of my life. What an amazing level of generosity from our 3 speakers, Cara Peake, Claire Braund and Nicola Wakeford-Evans. Their generosity in sharing so much has got my head spinning. And I'll just quickly go through some of the common themes, and it was building a profile, the importance of local and regional representation, understanding the environment around you, and that's the challenges, the networks and the issues, gender balance and values that include inclusion, transparency, innovation and reciprocity, understanding what board representation means. And all 3 speakers said that. So, you know, I guess that underlines what the importance of going from our kitchen tables to representing anybody. You just have to be spot on. Looking at your transferable skills, the importance of a quality board CV and the use of a professional photo. Self-belief, be your best advocate, and that's come through from all 3 speakers. Upskill your literacy around the boards. Nicola said Zoom is changing how companies and boards operate. And those of us in the rural and regional areas understand that, because that is essentially a major part of our life. Passion and experience is linked to our core values. So, you know, make sure that that's what you think about. Identify who in your networks that can help you. Get to know your local government representative, as they can put your name forward. AICD have some fantastic courses, as do Women on Boards. Listen to podcasts from women who are where you want to be, and keep your CV, LinkedIn profile up to date. And that is the briefest summary of the amazing level of information that we've got today. But they were the things that all 3 speakers actually spoke about with such passion. And so when you get from Kelly all of the inclusions that they have said and told us that they'll provide, you know, have a look at those and understand what it means. So again, thank you, Cara, thank you, Claire, thank you, Nicola Wakeford-Evans. And I don't know why I've just put your name on the end of it and not the other 2. So it's just such a lovely, it flows so nicely. Thank you thank you to all of the attendees for your attendance, your interest and your questions. I would please again ask you to do the poll before you sign off. And can I also thank Kelly, who has managed to multitask as only women can do for the last hour. And we really appreciate that. So that's me signing off, thanking you all. And hopefully this is the first of many, and we'll know that through the poll that you're going to do, aren't you all? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leonie.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nice to see you all.